Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 76 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. Today's tip comes to us from special guest Louise Brogan.
So my tip for being a more effective speaker is that when you are standing up in front of a room of people, try and connect with the people in the audience by making eye connections, because then the people feel much more engaged. You feel that you are more engaged with your audience. And to me, it just runs a lot more smoothly. And people then have come up to me afterwards and said they thought that was a really engaging talk, because I am not just staring at my notes or looking at a screen. I'm actually physically, making eye contact with the people in the audience. And that would be my tip for anyone who's having a speaking event.
And now for a bonus tip. As I record this, a lot of the US and Canada is on fire. Seattle is not burning right now, but it is covered in a thick layer of smoke and experiencing the worst air quality in a century. Seriously, I was amazed being outside earlier this evening and just sort of looking out, and you can actually see the air 10 feet in front of you. I've never encountered this in Seattle before. It is just incredibly thick. You can feel the ash and the smoke in the air, in your eyes, and in your lungs. In this type of environment, it becomes more important than ever to protect your voice and protect your lungs. If you go out, wear a mask, drink lots of water, in general, limit your exposure to outside air. If you have an opportunity to filter your air, go ahead and do that. Realize that you may find yourself stuffed up or sneezing when you get on stage, and that can make speaking just a lot tougher. Plus, your throat may be raw before you even start. So regardless of where you're speaking or recording, as a general rule, check the air quality in advance and do what you have to do to protect yourself. Stick around, and after the break, we'll hear more from Belfast-based social media speaker and consultant, Louise Brogan. I talked with this week's guest, Louise Brogan, a week or so ago. We spoke from 3 a.m. until 4 a.m. because she lives on the other side of the planet in Northern Ireland. Fortunately, I've always been a bit of a night owl. One of my favorite things about podcasting and technology in general is that it makes it possible to connect with folks around the planet and share our expertise and our stories. The other thing that's really empowering about tech is something I've really only come to realize over the last few weeks in talking with guests. Or maybe realize isn't quite the right word, because I've always kind of known this, but I guess I've only really just come to articulate it this way. Speakers used to have to wait for someone to offer them a stage. But now we can go out and create our own stage, whether that's launching a podcast or taking a social media training program on the road or creating our own event based on our Facebook group. We can go make a thing in ways that weren't nearly as easy just a few years ago. I talked about this a bit with Louise. We also spent time talking about how public speaking not only helps her find clients, but how she uses her own classes to figure out what else she needs to speak on. Louise Brogan is a social media consultant and trainer who teaches entrepreneurs and established companies and organizations how to market their businesses online. Louise's aim is to explain how to do things online in a simple, straightforward way. She's been working with organizations and small businesses for over 5 years. In 2017, Louise was listed in the Small Business Saturday Top 100 Small Businesses in the United Kingdom. And in March 2018, Louise was awarded Top 50 Small Business Advisors in the UK by Enterprise Nation. So, let's meet Louise. So Louise, welcome to 2-Minute Talk Tips. I'm thrilled to have you on the show this week.
Thank you, Bill. I'm really delighted to be here. It's a real pleasure.
It's one of those things where I start to see more and more folks who are, in social media or in other fields who are really adding speaking to what they do or adding these other activities to their speaking, because public speaking becomes such an important part of sharing a message and promoting a message. So how did you get into public speaking?
Well, my business has been going for about 5 years now, and my day-to-day work is that I help entrepreneurs, professionals really figure out how to use social media. And I am here in Northern Ireland. My local council were running a series of workshops, and they asked me would I like to apply to come and host one of the workshops. And I find that I really love standing up and talking to a room of people. I think it came from my dad. He was a similar personality. And so I I suppose I've become a bit known locally for coming along and doing speaking gigs, whether it's at an entrepreneurs network or today, for example, I'm arranging a speaking gig with the Institute of Financial Accountants. And people are really fascinated with social media. If you don't work in social media, most people who have a business or who are getting ahead in their professional career really want to know the nuts and bolts or even like the introductory level of social media. So it's a very popular topic for people to have a guest speaker to come along and talk to their network about. And I suppose that's really how I got started, was doing the workshops, finding out that I loved it. And then it's been a mixture of people connecting with me, mainly through LinkedIn, I have to say, asking would I come and speak to their network. And also then there would be tenders, what they call tenders, put out here looking for people to come and speak to at maybe like local business organizations or local council events. And then I would apply to be a speaker. So it's a mixture of being asked to come and speak and a mixture of me applying to go and speak to groups of people.
Interesting. So a tender is sort of like, is it like a recruiter or like a request for a proposal or?
Yeah. So a tender would be, and we're very, I suppose you could say, red tape heavy here in Northern Ireland, in that if a council has a piece of work that they want somebody to fulfill for them and it's over a certain amount of money, they by law have to put that out for organizations to submit their proposals to be able to be awarded that. And that's called a tendering process.
That's really interesting. One of the things I think is really interesting about the work that you're doing with social media there is it is so easy to get.
Yes, that's so true. Yes. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I see with people in social media is that they try to be on all the different platforms. And when I teach people about using social media, I say, maximum two platforms. So you've got to figure out where your audience are. So if you were trying to promote your podcast on social media, you would think, well, who is my ideal listener? And once I know who they are, what social media platforms are they actually on that they would be thinking about what it is that I'm teaching about? So for an example of that, when I get my date for the Institute of Financial Accountants, I will promote that event to accountants on Twitter and LinkedIn because that is the most likely place to find those people. I am running a different speaking thing that I'm running at the minute. I'm doing a series of 8 speaking gigs across the whole of Northern Ireland called She Means Business. And my audience for that are women entrepreneurs who are really just getting started in understanding how to use Facebook and Instagram. And I'm promoting those events mainly on Facebook. So because I work in social media, yes, I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and I have Pinterest as well. But my key message to people at those events is find the 1 or 2 platforms that your audience are on and focus on doing that 1 or 2 really well, rather than spreading yourself too thin across lots of platforms and not really doing any of them well.
That makes a lot of sense. So when you're talking to the accountants, you're probably not promoting that gig so much through Pinterest and Snapchat.
No, definitely not. No. I'm more likely to find those people on LinkedIn.
Right.
If you had an accountant called Bob who might come along to that event, it's quite likely that Bob also has a Facebook account. But when he's on Facebook, he's not thinking about work. You know, he's maybe looking at his sister's kids on their holiday or vacation pictures. He's not thinking about attending events. But when he's on LinkedIn, it might be that he checks his LinkedIn a couple of times a week during his commute to work. So when he's more in thinking, his mindset is more geared towards working events there. So it's much more likely that he's going to pick up the event on LinkedIn. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. It's about targeting your audience, figuring out what the audience needs, and figuring out what your goal is and what you need to do to accomplish that goal, which is, so whether you're talking about your social media strategy or when you're talking about crafting a speech, it's the same thing. You start with your goal in mind and figure out what you need to do to reach that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that with social media, I think some of the mistakes that people make are they go in and start to sell straight away. Whereas what I teach people to do is actually to raise your visibility by talking about the subject matter that you are the expert in. So if you're an accountant targeting family businesses, you might write a couple of articles about, here are, some tax tips for running your family business well, or, coming up to the end of year tax return, how to get your papers in order, that kind of an idea. And that then raises your visibility online so that people are more likely to then come to you and contact you for help, rather than if you just went on once a week and said, book our services to help you with your tax. Well, nobody's going to do that because they're not going to know who you are or have any connection with you. But if they're following you online because you're sharing interesting, helpful content, it's much more likely that after a while, when they do need an accountant, you're the person they're going to think of straight away.
So it sounds like the speaking opportunities is really something you backed into, not necessarily something you targeted or wanted to do for a long time. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think I didn't really appreciate the opportunities that come from having speaking engagements until probably in the last couple of years in my business. And actually, I would say this year, I have really come to understand how valuable they are in terms of lead generation for my business. And that's why I'm going out on the road and doing these series of 8 events. I mean, at those events, I'm speaking. So I had one on Thursday night and I was speaking to a room of 20 women all about, and I was being helpful. I was telling them how to use Facebook and Instagram, and I was fielding their questions. And it was constructive because I'd been at a training event run by Facebook in London, and I had a series of points that I wanted to get across to these women. And at the end, we had time for question and answers. But as a result of that event, 2 people the next day joined my membership online straight away, which is where I have all my training on how to use social media and online marketing. And 3 other women that night said, that's something I think we'd really like to work with you. And I have to follow up with that. And it's really seeing the opportunities that speaking bring me as a businesswoman to get myself out there that turns into lead generation for the business. That's something I've really only come to appreciate this year.
Awesome. So it's really been a tool for helping other folks and generating additional business.
Yes.
And that's one of those things that's really interesting because there are a number of folks out there who are really who like to speak for just the sheer experience of being up on the stage, and not everybody feels that way. And what's really cool about that is that if you don't feel that way, there's still a lot of value for you in getting up there and speaking and developing these skills to further enhance your career and whatever goals it is that you want to choose to pursue.
I think I'm really lucky in that I do get a real buzz out of it. I do really enjoy standing up in front of a room and talking to a group of people, no matter who they are. And it's before I launched my business, Bill, I was actually a project manager within the National Health Service here in the UK for 11 years. And in that role, I could have been speaking to a room full of nurses, or I could have been speaking to a room full of senior directors in the health trust. And I think having that experience has really helped me, because of course, everyone gets a little bit nervous before they do a speaking gig, but I don't ever say no because of who the audience are going to be, because I have that experience, I think, from that job.
And that gives you a certain level of comfort and of knowing that, if things go wrong, that they're not going to go that wrong. No, you're not going to get hurt.
No one's going to throw anything at me, hopefully.
Right. Exactly. And, if they do, rotten fruit tends to be pretty soft anyway.
I have to duck. Get good reflexes.
which means it counts as exercise as well.
Yeah, there you are. That's a win-win.
So you've been doing, did a number of these tendered opportunities. You've got this, it looks like this tour that you're doing across Northern Ireland over the course of the next month or so. What is the conference scene or the speaking scene like in Northern Ireland? Is there a lot of this type of thing going on, or is it kind of unusual? Are people often attending addresses and things like that?
I would say that there's quite a lot of more small to middle-sized events that people go to. There's a thing called Digital DNA here, which is a big 2-day event, and that's an annual event. And there's the Women in Business Northern Ireland. They would have a conference once a year. So there are the big conferences, but nothing on the scale that you might see in maybe London or Birmingham. But we're only about 90 minutes away from Dublin here as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to 2 conferences, one called Inbound Marketing in Dublin in September, and another one for a women's network in October. So now I'm not speaking at either of those. I'm going as an attendee, but it's something to aim for the following year. But also, being in Northern Ireland doesn't prevent you from applying to be a speaker at an event in, England, Wales, or Scotland. You can travel. It's only for me to fly to London. So I'm going to a Upreneur Summit in November, and to fly to London, it's only about an hour and a half flight, and it's very cheap. It's less than £100 to get a return flight to London. So actually, if you wanted to do speaking gigs in London, it's not that too far a reach to organize something like that. Right.
That's practically a commute.
Yeah, exactly. We're pretty small here in the UK and Ireland. It's not that, the distances are not that big.
Exactly. You talk about traveling 90 minutes to Dublin. You wouldn't even have left Washington State in the US if you drove 90 minutes from Seattle. Exactly. So that's really interesting. And you've got then a fairly dense population too. So there's opportunities there within a very compact space. And what I also think is really cool is that you went ahead and put together your own tour. You went ahead and essentially created your own stage for doing your talks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this She Means Business program is actually, it's a Facebook-led program. And last year I was invited to 10 Downing Street, which is, where our Prime Minister is based in the UK. Right. So I was invited to 10 Downing Street as part of top 100 small businesses in the UK. And at that event, I met a couple of other people who do similar work to me. And one of them said to me, Louise, you should apply for the Facebook She Means Business program. I said, what is that? She says, well, it's this program about going out and talking to women entrepreneurs about using Facebook and Instagram. So I applied, and then I got brought over to Facebook in London, had the day's training. And that program is running once a month in Belfast. And I thought, well, why should it only be Belfast? You know, even though we are a small country, once you go, and it's 90 minutes to Dublin, but it's 2 hours from Belfast to Derry, which is about 70 miles. So we haven't got a fantastic motorway system here, to be honest. So I thought, well, the women who have their own businesses is in Derry and Enniskillen and Armagh, all these towns around Northern Ireland, can't necessarily come up to Belfast for a 2-hour event. So why don't I go out in the road and see if I go out in the road, will they come to me? So that's what I'm doing. And yeah, it's been really popular and really, people are really enthusiastic about it. And it's just really nice to meet these other women around the country who are growing their own businesses and finding out what they're doing and potential collaborations. And it's just, I find it really enjoyable. And whether or not any of those people become clients of mine or join my membership, it's not an aside, because of course you have to focus on what you're doing to build your business. But it's also good research for me to see what these people actually want to learn about and know about as well. So I'm raising my own visibility, and I'm finding out what actually my potential clients want to know most about. So I'm just really enjoying it.
You know, I find that one of the most underutilized resources for learning more about how to improve what you're doing is just keeping track of all of the questions that people do ask. And,
yes.
You know, it really highlights what they want to know, even if you can provide the answers to them, still making a note of that, because that tells us that there's a pain point there, and there's got to be a way to address that.
Yeah. And then that then feeds what you write. Well, for me, feeds what I write about on my blog post, or maybe what I talk about on my podcast.
Right.
Because that's, you know, if one person's asking out of a group of 20, you can be sure there's hundreds of others who want to know the answer too.
So one of the things you talk about is the idea that the curse of knowledge holds folks back. What do you mean by that?
So if you are, say take podcasting as a subject, for example. If you're a podcaster and you listen to lots of podcasts, you can't assume that the people that you're talking to in the room know what a podcast is. So if I am at my event on Thursday night of these 20 women, I said, oh, and I have a podcast. And then I immediately said, a podcast is like almost like a little radio show that I record and I put out, and you can go to iTunes and listen to it. And then you can see people going, oh, right, well, I've never listened to a podcast. That's interesting to know. Whereas a lot of people might go to give a speaking engagement and start talking about something and assume that their audience know the same background knowledge as you do. So I could have just said, yes, and you can listen to that in my podcast, and moved on to the next thing. But you might have 5 or 10 women in that group thinking, well, I don't know what a podcast is. And they're
embarrassed to ask.
Yes, they're too embarrassed to ask you, well, sorry, what does that mean, in front of the other people? When actually, if one of them asked what it was, you probably would find out that others in the room are going, oh, I'm glad she asked that, because I didn't know what that was either. So when I'm delivering speaking gigs or workshops or any training, I never assume that my audience already understand what it is that I'm talking about. Because the curse of knowledge, it was actually, I was in a meeting last week with 2 solicitors or lawyers, and they were talking about, they write articles for the paper. And one of them said, and she gets her sister, who is not working in the law, to read through it, because if she writes it in a way that her peers understand her, and yes, then she looks great in front of her peers, but her audience is for non-legal people, then she needs to make sure that it can be understood by somebody who doesn't work within the profession. So her sister reads through it for her and will say, well, I didn't really understand what you meant by that. Or she say, yes, I can understand that. And it's not, people think that that's dumbing things down, but it's not. It's making the content more available for the people that you're actually targeting with it.
Right. And that's how you hit your goal. When we live and breathe this stuff, it's second nature and obvious to us, but that doesn't mean it's that obvious to everybody else. And it doesn't mean people who don't understand are dumb. It just means their expertise and experience is in an area that isn't ours.
Exactly. So when I was talking about podcasting, if I had talked to those two lawyers about podcasting and they didn't know what a podcast was, well, I don't understand anything about, civil litigation. I'm not even really sure what civil litigation is. So, but why should I?
And you hope you really never have to find out.
Yes, I hope so, Bill. Oh dear.
It's interesting. Even in podcasting, one of the things that seems self-evident to a lot of podcasters is the call to action we have to go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. We know that subscribing to a podcast is free. Most people who aren't in this world hear subscription and they think of that, $10 or $20 they have to pay for that magazine every year, or their cable TV bill, or whatever.
Yes. Or maybe they don't really understand why they would need to subscribe to a podcast.
Right.
As well. Yeah.
Right.
So everyone listening should subscribe to both you and I, Bill.
Absolutely. And they will get those links over at 2minutetalktips.com/Louise. So since we're talking about podcasts, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
I was one of those people who didn't know what a podcast was. About 2 years ago, I was on a business program and the mentor said to me, "Oh, you should listen to podcasts." And I said, "I don't know what that is." So bearing in mind, in Northern Ireland, there's quite a lot of podcasting, I think, much more so the other side of the Atlantic. It's a more relatively new concept here, I would say, in the last couple of years. So I didn't know what a podcast was, and I went off to listen to Seth Godin. Actually, was the first one I listened to, and I was just hooked. And then I found these other podcasters, and I thought, I would like to do this because I just became addicted to them, going out running in the morning or out walking the dog, listening to podcasts. And I thought I could do this. So I launched my podcast in January, and I have 42 episodes out as of this week. And my podcast is really, I talk to mainly women entrepreneurs, but not all. There are a couple of men on there too. About how they got started in business. And they're usually people who have left a corporate job to launch their own business. And it's about the challenges along the way and the lessons learned, and then how they actually use social media in their business to grow their businesses. So, but it's interesting because it's actually, I've done a few more episodes recently on my own where I have maybe talked through using a particular aspect, or like, say, for example, why you use Facebook groups within your business. And I really enjoy doing the solo episodes as well. So I think that's the beauty of having a podcast, is you can mold it whatever way you want because it's your own show. Exactly.
There's no one to tell you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. And it is definitely a passion project of mine. As much as it is to do with business, I have to say. I love doing it. I love talking to people. I love this kind of thing, talking to somebody from the other side of the world who I never would have had a conversation with otherwise, about really interesting subjects and about how their businesses are. And I love it. I really enjoy doing it.
Awesome. Yeah, it is fantastic to go ahead and create your own stage and go ahead and just have that platform. And like I said, to meet such fascinating folks. I mean, I'm learning a lot from our conversation here. A few hours ago, I was actually on a chat with Victoria Mavis, who is a German magician who's incorporating magic into speaking. And,
wow.
All of these different things and these different aspects of life, and how all of these different types of things impact speaking and sharing your message. It really comes together in this fascinating world.
Yes. Oh, I must check Victoria out. That sounds really interesting.
So it sounds like the podcast then, of course, is also sort of the natural outgrowth of what you're doing with your business for teaching you more about what other people are doing that you can then incorporate and identify best practices for other folks that you are going to teach. And it's a way for you to share more of your expertise for folks who might not be able to engage your services.
Yeah, so one of the things I've started doing, and it's funny because it can be a little bit hard to get somebody who's willing to do this, is to do an on-air coaching call. So I had a man called Nigel who came on, and we worked through how to build his email list for his business. I really enjoyed that. But you have to, people are maybe a little bit wary about coming onto those calls because you kind of expose yourself as well a little bit on the podcast. But that really shows off, I suppose, how I'm able to help people and work with them. So I'm definitely keen to do more of those kinds of calls. But yeah, it's just a real mix. I have the interviews, I have some of the solo episodes, and then I want to do more of these coaching calls. But yes, it's certainly when I talk to entrepreneurs about how they use social media, they're maybe telling me how they're using it, and then we have a bit of a chat about how they can explore doing other things as well. And I just love hearing about other people's businesses too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many fascinating businesses that are out there that if they're not primarily a consumer business, you would just never know that is even a thing.
I know. That's so true.
On my other podcast about stroke recovery, I was just talking earlier today with a stroke survivor who actually had been running a business of managing the free magazine kiosks and pamphlet kiosks at the front of grocery stores that have advertising on top. And it's like, that's a business? and it was quite successful one.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. So yeah, this week I interviewed a lady who has a membership site where she has 10-minute Pilates videos. So there's businesses out there, as you said, you couldn't even imagine that they are businesses, and it's just fascinating. I just love the whole world of entrepreneurship. Absolutely.
So you're doing these coaching calls and talking with these entrepreneurs, and in general, who are your clients typically? What are they doing, and what are they looking to get out of the services that you provide?
I'd say my main client base it's not people who are literally starting out as entrepreneurs. It's more somebody who is in business for a year or two. Either they're already using social media, but they're not getting anywhere with it, or they're getting a bit overwhelmed with it. But they generally don't have a system in place for how to use social media. So I work with people. I mean, I have my membership site where I have training on all social media and email marketing and how to blog and how to build your email list and all that kind of stuff. But I also do one-to-ones with people. And it's about really setting up a system for them in terms of how they're going to create their content, how they're going to then post that on social media and drive people to their website or to their premises to actually become clients or customers. So it's really about understanding how the whole system works together. I started out where I just taught people how to use Facebook, for example, but then I realized, they might have a Facebook page, but they don't actually know what they're meant to be doing on it. So I've kind of, as your business grows, I suppose your offerings grow. So it's more now about understanding how the system works as a whole, from content creation, social media, building an email list, and how to really use all of that to get paying customers and clients.
And that's very different from the way the vast majority of people use social media just in their social lives. Using it as a business is a very different approach and has very different goals in mind.
Yes. And one of the things I have found, Bill, over the years is, and I would hear it at my events, people saying, oh, well, my nephew, he's 22 and he's always on Snapchat, so he can help you out. Or I actually heard a local business radio show here, I think it was on the radio, saying, get a student in over the summer to run your social media for you. And I was yelling, no, don't. They don't understand how you have to use it to build your business. Being able to chat with your friends on Messenger is not the same as being strategic about using the whole of online marketing to get more clients.
Right. Absolutely. And if you have any, somebody, just has any questions about that, go ahead and create a Facebook page for something. And then once you start going to that page as the owner of it, you just start looking at all of the different stuff that's a part of that. And it's just like, this is a completely different experience from anything you've ever encountered before on Facebook.
Yes, absolutely. And Facebook actually are really clamping down on people who use their personal accounts to sell as well. So I'm a member of a group that Facebook run here. I think it's UK only, called Facebook Business Connect. It's like an invite-only group. And they announced that in the group this week, actually, saying, we are really clamping. Like, they just delete these accounts that people use, set up a personal account, connect with about 2,000 people, and then try to sell to them through a personal account. And they're just starting to delete those accounts now.
Interesting. And I know they've also just blocked allowing podcast hosts to post directly to personal pages as well.
Yes, that's all part of it. It's all about cleaning up the site and making it more, when I went to Facebook, the training day, it's all about the user experience for them. So if, my mum and my sisters, who are not involved in social media for business whatsoever, if they go to Facebook and all they see are friends and family trying to sell them stuff, they're not going to spend any time there. So they're going to start leaving the site. So Facebook's whole focus is about keeping people like that coming back and connecting with their friends and family. It's all about building community online, and people who abuse that personal account to sell or promote their businesses are they're just going to wake up one day and find out their account's deleted and all those contacts that they've made are going to be gone.
Right.
So that's another really, really good reason why you should set up a Facebook page and build your audience on there. Or, I talk to people a lot about creating Facebook groups and having building your own business community inside a Facebook group. You need a Facebook page to direct people into that group at the same time. There's a lot more to it than just hiring your 21-year-old neighbor to create a Facebook page and post on it for you.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent reason to go ahead and hire a social media consultant who can help you navigate all of these waters while you focus on your core business.
Exactly. You don't go to, we go to the dentist when we have a toothache. We don't just pull the tooth out ourselves. We'll find an expert.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully we don't. Not sure that's the best analogy I've ever come up with. Oh, dear.
Well, if we want the right results, we go to a professional.
That's what I meant, Bill.
I suppose I could pull it out myself, but I will really regret that.
I think so. You'll end up at the dentist anyway, and you'll end up paying more to fix it.
Absolutely. So if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
Okay, so my website is socialbni.com, and I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of those places as socialbni, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn as well as Louise Brogan on linkedin.com.
Okay, that is awesome. And they can also find all those links over at 2minutetalktips.com/Louise. And we'll also make that 2minutetalktips.com/socialbni.
Oh, and of course, Bill, I have a podcast called the Social Bee Podcast, which I always forget to mention.
Awesome. And yes, and definitely go ahead and subscribe for free to that podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, as we've been mentioning, Social Bee N-I, that is B as in the cute fluttery bug, not the letter.
Yes, exactly.
So, Louise, thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a complete pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Louise's story as much as I enjoyed asking her about it. What did you think about Louise's comments on speaking gigs and social media? Let us know in the comments over at 2minutetalktips.com/socialbni. Head on over to socialbni.com to check out Louise's courses, event schedules, and more. Be sure to subscribe for free to the Social Bee podcast and, of course, 2-Minute Talk Tips in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Does someone you know run social media for their small business? Send them a link to 2minutetalktips.com/socialbni and ask what they think about it. And, of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.